Elena Romero never fired her kiln without offering a pinch of blue cornmeal to the 4 directions. She had learned the ritual from her grandmother, Yolanda Lightfeather, a Tewa potter who said the earth liked gratitude the way a pot liked polish. Elena's studio stood behind her adobe casita on Canyon Road in Santa Fe, so close to the galleries she could smell tourist sunscreen on high desert afternoons. Her pottery sold well. Tourists adored the ochre clay streaked with mica. But Elena still felt like a student, forever smoothing the wet coils, coaxing the old songs from the mud. On the first Tuesday in May, she loaded the kiln with the largest commission of her career, 20 ceremonial seed jars for the governor's spring gala. Each jar carried a design she'd borrowed from a petroglyph her grandmother took her to see at La Cieneguilla, a simple hatching of 4 parallel lines. The symbol, Yolanda had said, meant seed lies sleeping. Elena had painted it faithfully with white slip and red iron oxide, told the jars to dream of rain, then closed the kiln's iron door. The firing seemed ordinary until the moment she opened the hatch the next dawn. The seed jars were perfect in shape and sound, but on their shoulders, where she'd painted 4 neat lines, new marks had emerged as if drawn by a ghost hand. Brown silhouettes, houses with broken doors, spirals whose ends split like forked tongues, and tiny stick figures running in opposite directions skated across the burnished surface. Elena lifted one jar, breath catching. The added imagery looked like authentic petroglyphs, pitted, granular, the color of scorched earth. Her grandmother had warned her that ancestral designs occasionally walked in fire, but Elena had only half believed. She set the jar on a dusty dresser and phoned Yolanda at Taos Pueblo. The elder answered in Tewa, voice gravelly with 5 a.m. rum. Elena described the apparition. "A blessing," Yolanda murmured, not sounding startled at all. "Something wants to be remembered." Then the line went silent except for the soft crinkle of her grandmother relighting sage. Elena documented the glitched jars with her phone, posted a single photo to her small Instagram following, and spent the afternoon sanding fresh greenware. By evening she'd nearly forgotten the mystery when a news alert flashed. Home burglary on Palace Avenue. Owners on vacation. She clicked. The surveillance photo showed a half-shattered French door, glass sprinkled like sugar over a Spanish colonial rug. She zoomed in. The door's breach looked familiar, like the fractured rectangle etched on the first jar. Her chest tightened. Coincidence, she decided. Santa Fe had its share of break-ins. Still, she couldn't sleep, thinking of forks in fire and spirits that wanted remembering. 3 nights later, Elena fired again, this time a half-dozen water jars for a chef in Chicago. When she cracked the kiln the next dawn, more wandering imagery decorated the pieces. A broad double spiral connected by a zigzag arrow. 6 hours later, a burglar cut a twin path through the roof tiles of the Spiral Sage Yoga Studio, sliding a rope into the dark. He stole copper fixtures and fled, vanishing like smoke. Elena's lungs fluttered. She laid the new jar beside the headline on the Santa Fe New Mexican. The shapes matched too neatly to dismiss. She poured herself chicory coffee, walked the yard in purple morning light, and heard her grandmother's voice. Symbols warn long before language does. The question was, warn whom? And how loudly? Miguel Ortiz, a childhood friend turned freelance crime reporter, visited that afternoon, lured by the bizarre Instagram photo. He found Elena in her studio, pots spread on cotton blankets like sleeping children. "Looks like the ancients hijacked your kiln," he said, peering at the petroglyphs. "You call the galleries yet? This is the type of weird that sells." She shook her head. "Miguel, these are burglary maps." He laughed, until she matched each jar to a news report. The smile slid from his face. "Let's test it," he said. "When's your next firing?" "Tomorrow night. Small batch mixing bowls. Invite me. If another symbol shows up, I'll dig for patterns," Eleanor agreed. although unease coiled in her gut. If the old ones were sending messages, why choose her? She was half Tiwa, half Mexican, with a foot in each ritual and none firm on holy ground. Kele. The test came quickly. Elena's kiln cooled at dawn. Miguel arrived with hot donuts and a police scanner app. Together they lifted the lid. On a wide mixing bowl, a new petroglyph cut across the matte surface, 3 rectangles nested inside one another, each doorless, each cracked at one corner. Miguel photographed it from every angle. "Looks like a Russian dollhouse," he said. Elena's mouth tasted of iron. She fetched her grandmother's field guide to northern Rio Grande symbols. In the margin, beside a near-identical drawing, Yolanda had scrawled, "House inside house equals trove, sealed cache, crack equals breach, boarding school raids." At 9:07 a.m., the police scanner chirped. Unit 5, be advised, break-in reported 310 Canyon Road, cross of Delgado. Miguel and Elena locked eyes. Canyon Road was 2 blocks north Macro Row. They sprinted outside. Sirens wailed in the distance, crisp as winter birds. By the time they reached the scene, a half-dozen artists huddled by a crimson gate. A gallery owner sobbed. Inside, shattered display cases glittered. Security footage later showed thieves in black balaclavas in and out in 3 minutes. Miguel's reporter sense surged. While police dusted for prints, he interviewed neighbors. Elena stood quiet, bowl hugged to her chest. She pictured invisible ancestors drawing warnings in smoke, only for their fragile signals to fall on nothing but glazed clay. That night, Miguel posted a subdued blog entry, "Pre-Columbian alarm clock?" hinting that a local potter's strange art might be predicting crimes. He changed Elena's name, blurred images, kept details vague. The Santa Fe subreddit devoured it. Half the comments dismissed the story as art gallery marketing, the other half begged for more. Detective Karina Ramirez, scrolling during a late shift, screenshot the post and flagged it to her captain. Elena spent Thursday at Taos seeking counsel. Yolanda greeted her at the Pueblo with ash-smudged cheeks and eyes like chipped obsidian. They sat in the shade of an Orno oven, dividing prickly pear jam onto fry bread. "The symbols arrive because you listen," Yolanda said. "Clay remembers its own stories, child." "But they show danger," Elena replied. "If I can't prevent it, what's the gift for?" Yolanda drew a circle in the dirt, then 4 radiating lines. A compass rose. "Our people carved messages on canyon walls so hunters far off could return safe. Those who see must speak." Elena took the long way home through high desert, thoughts rattling like pebbles in a canteen. She resolved to speak louder, then... When the next firing came, Elena placed a blank sketch pad beside the kiln. If a new symbol emerged, she would make a quick copy, email it to Detective Ramirez because Miguel had convinced her the detective was open-minded, and hope law enforcement got ahead of the thieves. The kiln's door swung open. Sunday at dawn. Steam and alkaline heat kissed her face. On a slender pitcher she found a petroglyph of 2 clasped hands, one drawn whole, the other missing its thumb. Across the belly ran 5 diagonal slashes. She sketched it, scanned it, and typed an email. Subject, possible burglary warning, please read. She attached her previous drawings and a table of crimes. After hovering, she pressed send, heart jackhammering her ribs. 5 hours later, Detective Ramirez's reply arrived. "Miss Romero, your information is unconventional, but correlations are significant. Can we meet tomorrow, 10 a.m.? They met. In Elena's studio, Miguel present as quasi-legal support. Ramirez, mid-40s with wind-carved cheeks, asked pragmatic questions about process. Elena walked her through clay harvesting by the Rio Chama. The slip paints, the 2,000-degree fire. She described how the original designs never included the extra glyphs. Ramirez examined the foretold burglaries. We have no suspect, but evidence suggests one group, highly mobile. She tapped the picture with the missing thumb glyph. This a location or a person? Elena shrugged. I only know what the lineage book says. A severed thumb marks a taker who sheds blood. Miguel added, maybe the ringleader hurt his hand. Ramirez's nostrils flared as if scenting a lead. She left with digital copies of every glyph, promising to consult experts. In the following week, no burglaries occurred. Elena's kiln sat idle, but her stomach churned, as though waiting for an alarm. She dreamed of pots rattling like bones, of red hands smearing adobe walls. On Friday morning, she decided to fire a single experimental pot, hoping the kiln would stay silent and prove the nightmare over. The clay she chose came from a new vein near Ojo Calida Darka, more ferric. She sang while coiling an old lullaby about corn maiden twins and painted no design at all, leaving the surface blank. When the firing cooled, she lifted the pot into mid-morning light and felt the blood drain from her face. There, in ashbrack relief, stretched the most elaborate glyph yet. A small square with an open roof. Clearly her own studio stood beside a crescent moon, meaning night raid. Above that, the sever-thumb figure loomed with a spiral heart, signifying violence rather than mere theft. Below, 4 stick figures lay on their sides. Death. Elena stumbled to her phone and dialed Detective Ramirez. I think they're coming for my studio, she said, voice thready. When? Tonight. The moon's waxing crescent like the glyph. Ramirez inhaled. We're monitoring burglary chatter. Nobody's mentioned your shop, but we'll be ready. Ready how? Stake out. 2 unmarked units. After hanging up, Elena called Miguel. He insisted on being there. She resisted, then relented. Ancient warnings were one thing, surviving them was another. Night sank over Santa Fe, stars popping like pinholes in obsidian. Elena's studio sat dark, except for embers in the Kiva fireplace and a single bulb above the workbench. She and Miguel pretended to pack finished pots for shipping, while 2 plainclothes detectives waited in a parked SUV down the alley. Elena's new pot, the warning vessel, stood on a shelf, its glyph turned outward like a sentinel. At 11:37 p.m., Elena felt it, a prickling across her forearms. The same static she felt each time Clay spoke. A second later, boards on the rear window gave a soft crunch. Miguel froze. Elena tipped her chin toward the kiln room. Glass fractured. Then a body slid through, silhouette lanky under ski mask. Another shape followed. Broader, left hand gloved but appearing stiff. The second thief's right hand gripped a crowbar. Miguel's phone hovered behind a jar. He texted Ramirez a single word. Now. The thieves crept closer, eyes glinting. Crowbar hand scanned shelves, pausing at a rack of silver inlay plates. He gestured. The lean one produced a canvas sack. Elena's pulse roared. She remembered Yolanda's teaching, those who see must speak. These pieces aren't for you, she said, aloud. The thieves jerked. Crowbar hand swung his tool. Who else, lady? You think Clay belongs to anyone anymore? His voice rasped. Words hissed through teeth. Detectives burst through the front, guns drawn. Santa Fe PD, drop it! Pandemonium ignited. Lean thief bolted for the window, but Ramirez tackled him, wrenching both arms behind his back. Crowbar hand lunged toward Elena. Miguel shoved a heavy greenware bowl into the thug's chest. The bowl shattered, shards exploding like eggshells. Crowbar hand raised his bar, revealing a right thumb, but the left glove hung limp where a thumb should be. Severed thumb man. Elena seized a bisque-furred jar and swung. The jar cracked against his temple. Before he fell, Ramirez's partner cuffed him, reading rights. Blood dripped from his hairline, mixing with clay dust. Guess you got your prints, Miguel panted. Ramirez crouched, tugging off the thief's glove. The left hand ended in scar tissue where the thumb had once sprouted. She looked at Elena, awe widening her dark eyes. Your pot was dead on, she said. Press broke the story within 24 hours. Mystic Potter helps nab gallery thieves. Elena's phone erupted with calls. Good Morning America, art magazines, skeptics claiming elaborate PR. Ramirez publicly credited Elena's community vigilance, but avoided occult details. Miguel wrote a measured feature for the Albuquerque Journal describing indigenous knowledge intersecting modern policing. Serena writes a message to collectors intersecting modern policing. Sales inquiries flooded Elena's website. She turned most down. A week later, Yolanda ventured to Santa Fe, leaning on a cane carved with thunderbirds. Together they surveyed the studio, still scarred but safe. Yolanda traced the warning pot's glyph and smiled. The ancestors chose well. Elena brewed sage tea. Why me, though? Because you carry two worlds, her grandmother said. Bilingual in spirit and speech, Elena gazed at her quiet kiln. In the aftermath, she had considered locking it forever. But she understood now. The clay wasn't cursing her with nightmares. It was safeguarding the community. Its stories, however frightening, formed a guide. That evening, she prepared a new batch of river clay, kneading it until silky. Before coiling, she whispered, "I'm listening." The kiln glowed late into the night, flames licking secrets onto brand-new vessels. Whatever warnings arrived, Elena vowed she would see, she would speak, and above all, she would remember. Spring melted into summer. Burglaries plummeted. Word on the street said no one wanted to tangle with a Potter prophet and her ghost army. Detective Ramirez consulted Elena twice more. Once over a glyph suggesting wildfire, another time about one hinting at poisoned wells. The former guided the Forest Service to clear brush north of Tesuque before lightning struck. The latter proved to be a false alarm. Or perhaps, as Yolanda suggested, the preventative measures warded off harm entirely. Tourists continued to buy Elena's regular line of dinnerware. Yet on a high shelf she kept the predictive pot's evidence of a covenant. Sometimes she would stand before them, tracing each eruptive symbol, thanking the old ones who paved warning trails in the dark. She understood at last what her grandmother meant. Clay liked gratitude, and gratitude liked action. Art did not survive inside galleries alone. It patrolled alleys, guarded doorways, listened for footfalls no alarm could catch. One August evening, an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Carrasco, knocked breathlessly. She had received a flyer about a free security check from an unknown company. The men wanted to survey her back rooms, she said. Something felt off. Elena led her to the shelf of prophetic pottery, found a vessel fresh from last night's firing. On it curled a glyph of two snakeheads circling a doorway, the symbol for deception. Elena phoned Ramirez, who dispatched a patrol. The security men were already in Mrs. Carrasco's yard. Their van held crowbars and blank IDs. Arrests followed without incident. Afterward, Ramirez joked they should put Elena on payroll. Elena laughed but said no. She was paid in older currency. Still, each time fire embraced mud, the city slept a little easier. Near the first anniversary of the initial Kiln miracle, Miguel interviewed Elena for a long-form podcast. "What do you call what you do?" he asked in the closing segment. Elena thought of all the words: foresight, magic, tradition. She pictured the unbidden petroglyphs, yoke-bright flames, her grandmother's steady hands. At last she smiled into the microphone. "I call it listening to clay," she said, "and letting it speak before trouble walks through the door." The podcast ended. Across New Mexico and beyond, listeners paused, imagined their own silent vassals whispering from cupboards, and wondered what forgotten warnings lay curled in the glow of their everyday fires. In late autumn, Yolanda sent Elena a final gift. A small, chipped sherd from the La Cieneguilla cliff face. On its weathered skin was the earliest known version of the severed thumb figure. Elena placed the relic on her mantle, beside a photo of her parents. She realized the glyph's evolution had traveled centuries to reach her Kiln ancestral relay of caution. That night she dreamed the potter's road again, but now it led forward, not back. A procession of potters from different eras traded a single glowing jar. When the jar reached her hands, its surface was blank. "Your turn," a voice said. She woke, lit sage, then sat at her wheel. A new series formed, pots without any painted designs. She would let the fire write freely. Whatever came, she would translate for those with slower ears. She pressed the pedal, clay spinning fast under wet palms, hum of the wheel blending with dawn birds. Outside, Canyon Road was still asleep. Inside the studio, the conversation between Earth, Fire, and Vigilance began anew. And so it was that Santa Fe gained an unlikely guardian, a potter whose kiln told tomorrow's crimes. Skeptics called it coincidence, believers called it a blessing, Elena called it duty. Each day she offered a pinch of blue cornmeal, listening as the flames licked stories onto clay, stories of danger, remedy, and always remembrance. Because some art was meant for beauty, some for utility, but hers, she finally understood, was meant for warning. And as long as she shaped mud and courted fire, her city would hear the whispers that rose before the breaking glass.